Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. This is April 12th for Amonkhet preview season. Alright guys, we've got quite a bit to show you today, so let's just get through it. Protection of the Enigma is a 4 colorless and 1 white mana for an enchantment. If a source an opponent controls would deal damage to you, prevent 1 of that damage. It's an interesting card, and it's definitely going to see probably some sealed or limited play, especially if somebody has a quick aggro deck in sealed. I know the new land card will definitely hate this. As far as standard playability, no way. It's just too expensive for what it does. It's cute though, and I do like the art, but this is largely just for a story card, and that's just fine. Moving on to another story beat card, we've got Buy Force for X mana and 1 red for a sorcery. Destroy X artifacts. Okay, seems simple. For 3 mana, destroy 2 artifacts. Okay, that's pretty cool. Release the Gremlins, this is not. However, being able to dump some mana into it to be able to have a board wipe for artifacts is quite good. It'll probably see some sideboard play against the Aetherflux Reservoir decks, maybe some Mardu vehicles. Even though it doesn't hit Scrapheap's Grounder permanently, being able to spend 3 mana, kill a Ballista, and a Heart of Kieran on the same turn is pretty good. A lot of criticisms on this card right now is because it's a sorcery. I understand that, but again, 3 mana, kill 2 things, seems okay. We'll definitely have to see what the meta does for this card, but I think it's probably just going to be a sideboard 2 or 3 of. Also, I probably wouldn't play this in sealed or limited because the actual artifacts that are in the decks just don't number high enough to play main board. So of course this will be sideboard in limited and draft as well. Moving on to a multicolored creature, we've got Wayward Servant for 1 white mana, 1 black mana for a 2/2 zombie. Whenever another zombie creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If you guys remember Battle for Zendikar, there was a card similar to this called Calistria Healer. The only thing I would say that this card excels at is that the number of zombies in standard is much larger than the number of allies in Battle for Zendikar. So this may see some actual play. But in sealed and in draft, this will probably just see some, 2/2 bear play. But if you can get off a white-black zombie deck in sealed, that would be awesome. And this would definitely be the cherry on top in a draft environment deck too. Moving on to another multicolor card, we've got Enigma Drake, a 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 red, star, and 4 for Drake. It has flying, and Enigma Drake's power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. I like that this ability is back from Theros, as I do think having an instant and sorcery strategy in standard, or maybe just tabletop standard, is pretty fun. But the leaning towards all the graveyard strategy is quite heavy. I think Enigma Drake in limited and in draft will be quite good. However, in constructed, I'm not so sure. Playing an is-it strategy like this is very hit or miss, so we'll see what happens. But the 4 toughness does make it quite a threat. It doesn't get fatal pushed immediately, and it doesn't die to harness lightning straight off. And I think those are great evasive tactics for this kind of card. I definitely have high hopes for it. Moving on to a red rare, we've got Sweltering Suns for 1 colorless, 2 red mana for sorcery. Sweltering Suns deals 3 damage to each creature. It has cycling for 3 colorless mana. Anger of the Gods is finally back, and it has cycling. Thank you. While Radiant Flames is easier technically to cast, Sweltering Suns will probably replace its spot just because it can do 3 damage outright for 3 mana. But we've desperately needed a sweeper like this for a while. And being able to do 3 mana for 3 damage outright is great in both sealed, draft, and standard. I definitely think this will probably be replacing Radiant Flames, and if not, it will eventually. Moving on to another red card, we've got Harsh Mentor, a 1 colorless, 1 red mana, 2/2 human cleric. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature, land, or artifact on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. What an interesting card. A very nice lockdown strategy. This is definitely answering the crew ability, so whenever they crew a creature like Heart of Kieran or whatever, they're getting 2 damage dealt to their face. I think that's really nice lockdown. Whether this will see standard play or not is conjecture. I do think in limited and draft it's just a fine 2/2 bear. I'm not sure if that ability will ever crop up in sealed or draft. But besides that, the artwork on this card is sweet. Moving on to a blue rare, we've got Vizier of Many Faces, a 2 colorless and 2 blue 0/0 shapeshifter cleric. You may have Vizier of Many Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Except if Vizier of Many Faces was embalmed, the token has no mana cost, it's white, and it's a zombie in addition to its other types. You can embalm for 3 colorless and 2 blue mana. Very interesting clone here. I have no idea what this will actually do in the actual standard environment, but I think in limited and draft it's a lot of fun. The mana cost is a little high here for me, but being able to have recursion is very good. I definitely think there'll be a lot of brews that kind of mess with this card. Besides that, dude, this art is sick. Moving on to another blue card, we've got Glyph Keeper, a 3 colorless and 2 blue mana for a 5/3 Sphinx. It has flying, and whenever Glyph Keeper becomes a target of a spell or ability, for the first time each turn, counter that spell or ability. It has Embalm for 5 colorless and 2 blue mana. What a limited all-star here. Having to basically burn 2 kill spells on this card in the same turn because of its ability is insanity. It also having Embalm makes it even more difficult to deal with. This is probably borderline standard play for a control deck matchup too. Since there's so much removal in the format in standard right now, being able to counter the first pieces of removal, and being able to counter the second with cards in your hand, or let it go to the graveyard to embalm again, is quite good. Don't underestimate those 5/3 flyers. They'll get you. While it does die to Grasp of Darkness and Harness Lightning and things like that, because it can counter the first spell, being able to 2-for-1 your creature is quite good. This is one of the creatures I would kind of say is an automatic target for their removal, because obviously they don't want to get hit in the air for 5. But it does make it quite difficult to get rid of. Something that blue decks will love. Moving on to a white rare, we've got Anointed Procession. 3 colorless and 1 white mana for an enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice as many tokens instead. Whoa, okay. This card is pretty good. I can definitely see a lot of populate commander decks using this card for a lot of different strategies. In sealed and draft, this is probably gonna be a low pick for you, unless you can draft around it into an embalm ability deck. In standard, I'm unsure. I think this definitely would be like a win condition if you played it. However, being 4 mana is pretty expensive. I definitely like the story beat on the card, I love the art, and I definitely think commander players will be very happy to play it. Moving on to a multicolor rare card, we've got Samut, Voice of Dissent. A 3 colorless and 1 red and 1 green, 3/4 legendary human warrior. It has flash, double strike, vigilance, and haste. Other creatures you control have haste, and you can pay 1 white mana, tap it, and untap target creature. This card is like a smorgasbord of keywords. It does everything very well, and for 5 mana it's pretty good. However, one of the things I see whenever I look at cards like this is that R&D was just kind of running out of ideas, and so they threw everything on a single card. I'm unsure if this will see play. I think it will, but again, 5 mana for what it's doing, I'm not so sure. But the tempo strategy here in limited and in draft is ridiculous. This card by itself could win you the game. In standard, this card kind of needs something else to go on with it to make it viable. That's not to say it's bad, I think it's very good. I'm always a wait and see approach whenever I see cards that have so many keywords on them. But now today we've actually got 2 gods to show off. Yesterday I missed the green one because I wanted to get Nissa out there as quickly as possible. But let's go over the green god first. Ronas the Indomitable, a 2 colorless and 1 green mana for 5/5 legendary creature god. It has Death Touch and Indestructible. And Ronas the Indomitable can't attack or block unless you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Its activated ability is 2 colorless and 1 green. Another target creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end turn. This is probably the most powerful god we've seen so far. Again, limited draft and sealed, you're gonna absolutely pick this card like crazy. In standard, this slots nicely into basically every green strategy there is. And it's probably gonna come down on turn 3 turned on, as most creatures in green that have 4 power are naturally 4, or you can actually pump creatures to be able to unlock Ronas to attack. But Ronas is probably the one that has the least amount of effort to be able to turn on an attack. Its mana cost is low, its damage count is high, and it's probably gonna get played into an area where you can actually pump a creature and attack with Ronas on turn 4, something like that. I definitely think this will see standard play, absolutely. But let's move on to the Black God 2. Bontu the Glorified. 2 colorless and 1 black mana for 4/6 legendary god. It has Menace and Indestructible. Bontu can't attack or block this turn unless a creature you control died this turn. It has an activated ability for 1 colorless and 1 black mana. Sacrifice another creature. Scry 1, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This one's pretty close to the actual green god too as far as being able to turn on easily. The only caveat to that is that you need creatures to sacrifice. So being able to activate this every single turn is probably going to end up with a board state where you won't have any creatures on field except for this guy, and you'll just be playing cards to turn him on. Regardless of that, I do think having Menace is very good. And being a 4/6 is no joke. Again, low costed, high amount of damage and toughness, good keywords on it, and an activated ability that does quite a bit. Being able to scry 1, while not great by any means, it's still very good for what you're trying to do with this card, which is hopefully draw into a creature, being able to sacrifice it, to be able to scry again to draw into something else, basically stacking your deck every single turn if you get the opportunity to. And I like that a lot. The black-white strategy in standard has been so close, and there are cards in Amonkhet that make me think that it's actually going to be much better. So I can't wait to brew that for you guys. But that is all the cards I have for you today. Let me know what you think. Which one do you think is better, the green god or the black god? I think out of sheer power, the green god probably has it, but I think out of utility, the black god definitely beats them. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to MTG Traders for more content in the future. I'll see you guys tomorrow.